This presentation will be about learning goals, focusing on why learning goals are important and how to write a learning goal that is aligned to a benchmark and clear about what a student will be doing. Learning goals are like a GPS system that you use for a trip. A GPS will provide you with trip information about where you are, the distance to your destination. It will readjust your route if you take a wrong turn, but only if you enter the precise description about where you want to go. Students who do not know the intention of a lesson spend precious time and energy trying to figure out what the teacher expects them to learn. Learning goals convey to the student the destination for a lesson, answering for them the questions, what do I need to learn, how deeply do I learn it, and exactly how do I demonstrate new learning. Students should be able to answer the following 3 questions. 1, what will I be able to do when I finish this lesson? 2, what idea, topic, or subject is important for me to learn and understand so that I can do this? And 3, how will I show that I can do this and how well will I have to do it? In order for the students' questions to be answered, the teacher needs to be clear with his or her planning. Teacher clarity can be realized with the following 4 questions. What do students need to know? How will I know when they have learned it? What will I do for students who aren't getting it? And what will I do for the students who are getting it? Teacher behaviors impact student learning. How we approach and embed a benchmark into a lesson can be problematic. Some of the questions that we may struggle with are, do I understand the benchmark? Is a benchmark embedded in the learning? How can I be focused in my instruction? The process of writing clear, focused classroom learning goals is truly an art. Writing a learning goal allows us to marry the learning requirements of the standard benchmark with the teacher's curriculum. Learning goals allow us to stay focused. So with all that said, how about ready, set, let's get going. In the presentation titled Unpacking a Benchmark, you learned how we applied Rick Stiggins' definition of the 4 types of learning to understanding any given benchmark. As a review, take a look at the benchmark that is up on the screen. It has been determined that this benchmark is reasoning because the students are analyzing the meanings and functions of dance, such as dance as an art or dance as entertainment. To continue our review, Step 1 and 2 include, first of all, identifying the benchmarks that will be embedded into the lesson you will be teaching. Keep it doable. And second, unpack the benchmark by identifying the verb, identifying the learning type, and identifying the concept. If you're still a little fuzzy about this, go back and take a look at an earlier voice thread titled Unpacking Standards and Benchmarks. I am now going to walk you through the process of writing learning goals, using an example from my middle school art class where I wanted the students to study and use abstract expressionism. The first thing I do is identify the benchmarks that I want to cover in this particular unit. Looking them over, I decide that I want my students to demonstrate characteristics of the tools, materials, and techniques of 2-dimensional media for intentional effects in an original artwork, and I want them to create an original artwork in a variety of artistic contexts. I know I could use a number of benchmarks, but to keep my teaching focused, I land on these 2 benchmarks for this particular unit. My next step is to unpack them. I notice that my first benchmark is a skill benchmark because it has the verb demonstrate. The second benchmark that I'm using is a product and performance. It has the verb create. When you write a learning goal, you need to remember that first and foremost, your goal begins with the sentence stem, the student will. The learning goal is written for the student. You also need to align the type of learning in the goal that mirrors the type of learning called for in the benchmark, and that your goal statement uses benchmark language followed by specific classroom curriculum. So when you look at the example, you'll note that the first benchmark is a skill, and it's asking the student to demonstrate characteristics of the tools, materials, and techniques. I'm using this for my painting unit. So I have included into my learning goal the self-selected tools, materials, and techniques of painting, and the intentional effects are going to be about expressing feeling mood of a memory, music, and gesture. In the second benchmark, I want my students to create, but in this case, the create is in my curriculum of an original abstract expressionist painting. And my artistic context is that memory, visual interpretation of selected music, and gesture becomes the painting subject. When you review these two learning goals, do you see how I have provided precise description for my students' learning journey? From these learning goals, I can now focus my attention to developing intentional and incremental learning tools and teaching strategies, and be able to identify the aligned assessments for evaluating their skill and their ability to create. My students know exactly what I'm expecting, and they can begin to show me what they know and can do. These are just a couple of examples of the student work that came from those learning goals. Okay, so let's apply what you know. I could have, in my unit on abstract expressionism, included a third benchmark, one that was reasoning. The benchmark reads, analyze and interpret, those are reasoning verbs, a variety of visual artworks using established criteria. That's a concept. So rewriting that as a learning goal and marrying it to my curriculum, my learning goal would read, analyze, interpret, that's in the benchmark, in an artist statement how their finished painting was similar to or a departure from abstract expressionism and the work of Jackson Pollock. That's my curriculum, so I've married those two pieces. It is also important to note that in this benchmark, the variety of visual artwork using established criteria was translated into my curriculum to be how a finished painting was similar to or a departure from abstract expressionism and the work of Jackson Pollock. This phrase in my learning goal is how I translated established criteria, which is the phrase used in the benchmark. So ask yourself these 4 questions to review the criteria for writing a learning goal. Is a learning goal written for the student? Does a learning goal truly call for learning, and can it be assessed? Does a classroom learning goal sentence begin with reference to the benchmark and end with the reference to the curriculum? And finally, is a classroom learning goal type, according to Stiggins, knowledge, skill, reasoning, product, and performance, aligned with the type of benchmark? In closing, the best understanding for learning goals is in the practice of writing them. Use your team members or PLC members to help you with revision. Also, we have produced other VoiceThread presentations that explain the development of alignment of key teaching and learning components, unpacking standards and benchmarks, learning tools and teaching strategies, assessment activities, and evaluative criteria. We also have a website for more information about learning goals.